Welcome to Oaa Now, your home for Oakland Activities Association news and information. Here's your host, Sammy Terramina.
Welcome to Oaa Now. I'm Sammy Terramina, blogger of the Dragon's Den, blogger of Inside the OAA, and one of the hosts between Termina's and Orion Neighborhood Television. I'd like to welcome our friends watching on the local voice and SoundCloud. Of course, I am Sammy Terramina here. I'm doing Show Me Stuff this week. Ian Locke is on vacation. This week he will be back in 2 weeks. So we got a lot to talk about today. Of course, we had the dead period. Basically, not a lot that went on. Of course, a lot of AAU stuff. Of course, a lot of getting ready for football season, previewing that, getting some ideas how volleyball's going to look heading into the season. So we got a lot to talk about heading into the year. First, my big stories of the day, of course, as we mentioned, of course, there were a little bit of interesting debate topics. Of course, the Detroit News released an article on who is the projected top 25 players in the state of Michigan. There's several players that were ranked on the early look at it, and I'm looking at it right now. Some of the players mentioned here, of course, you have first day of football, of course, starts August the 6th. Basically, when you look at who could fit the role of the best players, there's a couple of them, especially in the OAA, and I think definitely they can. I think it wouldn't surprise me that these players are getting a lot of hype, a lot of media attention surrounding them. When I look at the players that were mentioned, OA caliber players, of course, obviously it starts off with Justin Rogers of Oak Park. Of course, Justin Rogers, of course, is mentioned. Only a junior. He's becoming he's got a lot of scholarship offers, as mentioned. But he's a 5-star prospect. He's been playing very well. He can play at both sides of the ball. Expected to lead that Oak Park volatile attack this year. When you look at the Knights, what they're expected to have this year, when you look at the likes of Dwan Mathis, who's an Ohio State commit, basically Oak Park is a team that's loaded. They're going to be, and it wouldn't surprise me if some preseason polls say Oak Park's ranked number one in the could be ranked number one in the OAA, and it wouldn't surprise me there. And because of the talent they got, now Oak Park's got a really tough schedule. That's no doubt about it. But when you look at the others around the league, Oak Park, of course, their team that's favored to win the white division this year, and I think personally it could be an interesting development. See where Oak Park is, of course, and Justin Rogers is gonna be a big part of that, and I think he does belong in this list. I'm a little surprised he's ranked third on this list. Now, the other two are very, very good players, of course, when you look at what the Detroit News released. Another player on this list, very interesting, is Lance Dixon of West Bloomfield. And Dixon's an interesting one because he's going to Penn State next year. A lot of hype surrounding him. Could play linebacker, could play in the secondary. But you know what I also noticed? Oddly enough, besides Mike Seidel last year at West Bloomfield, a lot of their top players were single-digit numbers. And that's an interesting compliment that West Bloomfield has, is a lot of their top players, a lot of their most athletic players were single-digit numbers. So that's a surprise to me. That's what I did not know in my years covering West Bloomfield. But back to Lance Dixon. When I look at Dixon, he could be a really dynamic player. I think he's going to be a really interesting player to keep an eye on this year. Of course, he was very instrumental in their game last year against Detroit Cass Tech. Of course, he's a Penn State commit, as mentioned. But I think for Dixon, I think he's expected to do a lot more for Coach Ron Bellamy and his team. It was a couple of years ago that you look at the Lakers, I think what really turned the Lakers' fortunes around was that 2013 year when they had Tristan Jackson. I think personally, when I look at West Bloomfield, basically this is a team where they gotten better real quick. You know what I mean? The last 4 years, this has been a football team that's really gotten things going. You know what I mean? They've made the state finals. They've gotten to they've gotten past that playoff monkey off their back. And a lot of that, of course, got to give credit to the current players in the West Bloomfield system and also the coaching staff. Of course, Bellamy's done a really nice job. Zach Hilbers has done a really nice job getting that program there. Of course, players like Bryce Beasley, Taj Mustafa, and then, of course, Tristan Jackson. I mean, like, West Bloomfield really has done it. They've done it the right way. Now, has there been things I don't like? Yeah, I mean, because of transfers and all that, but they got a good system in place. They got a good coaching staff. They're very athletic. They're very committed. But Lance Dixon, number 7 on this list, very interesting. Of course, they got him as a linebacker. I think he can also play both sides of the ball as well. But interesting ranking there for what the Detroit News has him ranked. Dwan Mathis is mentioned, Oak Park, quarterback of the Knights. Mathis, of course, now is going to be the guy at Oak Park now that Corey Graham has transferred out to Harper Woods. For me, Mathis kind of reminds me of that Braxton Miller type of player. He can spread you out. I mean, and Oak Park's offense could pretty much look like a modified Ohio State offense when you look at the team they've got. And it's a very interesting compliment because you have Dwan Mathis can play the role of Braxton Miller. And he's going to Ohio State. I mean, when I look at Dwan Mathis, I mean, this is a guy that could do some significant damage. I mean, this year for Oak Park, and I think he will do some damage. And I think at the end of the day, when you look at what Oak Park's got, this is a team that could do some damage. They could do some, especially not only in the white division, but also once they get in the playoffs. The only nag that I have on Oak Park, it's been the regional round, where Oak Park has not gotten past that, not ever in their school history. The only other opportunity where Oak Park got the regional besides last year was 2012 when they lost to Wyandotte. Of course, they were formerly known as Wyandotte Roosevelt at the time, but that was also a game Oak Park had a chance to win. And like last year when they lost to Warren De La Salle, they actually blew that game against Warren De La Salle. But I think, for Oak Park, their pressure is going to be can they get to the regional? And I think they have the quarterback in Dwan Mathis that can get them at that direction. I mean, Oak Park's a senior-heavy team. They got a lot of juniors on that team as well they got a ton of experience as well. So, so Mathis reminds me a lot of Braxton Miller. I mean, and I think Oak Park's going to be fine where they're at. And I think, when you look at players like Dwan Mathis who can lead that team, I think he can be he's going to be a key complement to that. I really do. When I go down the list, of course, I see I keep seeing I'm looking at the list right now, and very interesting here. Trey Mosley's on here. I mean, of course, Mosley, he's a Michigan State commit. Last season, he played alongside A.J. Abbott. Of course, he's going to Wisconsin. When you look at what Mosley's game is, I mean, an interesting comment from Zach Hilbers last year at Media Day was, Mosley was the most consistent of the receiving group. And that says a lot when you look at all the athletes West Bloomfield had. When you have receivers like Taj Mustafa and A.J. Abbott, of course, Mosley was technically, I consider, the third receiver last year. Now, he's going to be the number 1 receiver. So, very interesting. Of course, it's mentioned the only concern I have with West Bloomfield is who's going to be the starting quarterback. That's the only concern I got. I mean, they got playmakers. They got a good running game. They got a good line. They got the linebackers are good. I mean, secondary is good. I mean, they got everything. The only concern I have about this team is going to be quarterback. And whoever gets that job at quarterback, it's going to be interesting because I think it's a three-player competition over there, quarterback for West Bloomfield. So that's very interesting. Very, very interesting. But Trey Mosley was 15 on this list. I thought he could have been a little bit higher. I thought Mosley could be a little bit higher. Because I think that there's some players that I think he's better than. When I look at the sheet here, and I've seen a couple of these guys play, but I think Mosley's better than 15 in my opinion. I think he is. Next we have Roderick Hurd at Farmington Hills Harrison. Now, when you look at Roderick Hurd, there's a possibility he could play everywhere for Harrison this year. It's a real possibility. I mean, the reason why that is because of Harrison's lack of depth, and that could be an issue going forward for this team. I mean, it really well could be something that for the Hawks, it could be in their final season as a school, you're going to put everything on the line. And pardon. You look at Roderick Hurd. I mean, this is a guy where he could play anywhere. He can play running back. He can play wide receiver. He can play defensive back. It was even talked to where he could play quarterback, which is very unusual for me because, yeah, Roderick Hurd's a Northwestern commit, but why would you have him play quarterback? When you look at his future, basically being either a defensive back or basically being a receiver. And you look at what Hurd brings to the table, and I think he's going to do a very good job at Harrison. I mean, Harrison's got some concerns. I mean, there's no doubt. But Roderick Hurd doesn't really bring you that much concern at all. And I think he's going to be playing a ton this year. Could he be playing all three positions, the offense, defense, special teams, versus what Charles Woodson did when he was at Michigan? It's possible. I mean, I think when you look at probably all-around athletes, probably this could be Roderick Hurd as an athlete, purely an athlete, and I think he is going to do that this year for Harrison in their final years of school. So when I look at Harrison coming in, people ask if Harrison does make the playoffs this year, where are they going to go? Where are they going to go? Are they going to go D4? Now, John Harrington, Harrison's coach, said, if they get the playoffs, they'll be solidly D4, which would set them up play a team like Ithaca. Make sure they play a team like but when I look at Oak Park, this is a team look at a team like Harrison, the schedule's brutal. I mean, you got to play teams like Oak Park, Groves. I mean, like those are going to be two tough games. I mean, Oak Park and Groves are going to be very, very good in that division. I think Troy Athens could be a sleeper. I mean, I was working on my little early preview the other day. I think Troy Athens, under Coach Billy Keenest, could be a sleeper to keep an eye on. There's no doubt about that. I think when I look at players like Roderick Hurd, I think he's gonna do very well. I think that he's going to be he's a dynamic player. He's very athletic, very talented. And I think you need that if you want to be successful. I mean, you really want that to be successful. Other players I'm high on that the Detroit News did not even put on. I like Kalia Dawsey at Groves. I think that Dawsey is a very underrated player. Dawsey could bring, he's a linebacker, but he does so many different things for Coach Brendan Flaherty's team. I mean, I think he's a player that can do some damage for them. Um, I mean, he's going to be key to see where this veteran heavy Groves team goes this year. But he was a player that that I would think possibly consider putting him on there. I mean, I think Dossie's going to have a really big year at Groves. And to look at it from that perspective, you got development there for Groves. I mean, like I do like this football team going forward. I mean, this is a team where I think could do some damage this year. Groves could be a team led by Dossie. I mean, Dossie has gotten some looks, which is very good for him. But for me, Dossie's gonna be a very big important part for Groves heading into the year. And I think that at the end of the day, you look at a player like that, Dossie should have been on the Detroit News top 20 list, but he's not. But he's one of those players that's mentioned to keep an eye on heading in the year. Others to keep an eye on heading in the early football season. Other notable players to keep an eye on, of course, Clarkson's big two up front. You got Rocco Splinter and Garrett Dillinger. Both those players at Clarkston. They've received D1 offers. They're both big, really good linemen. Play both sides of football. Going to need to be relied on a lot for Clarkson this year for the defending state champs. I think when you look at Clarkston, they're a team that's a mystery. I mean, the reason why I say a team of mysteries is because, last year the state championship run for Clarkson came out of absolutely nowhere. I mean, it really did. I mean, when you look at what the Wolves had, of course they had a very good quarterback and very good running back in Michael Flugel, good quarterback in Nate Yabali. Now those two are gone. So when you look at when you have the line, of course, when you have two D1 caliber players in Dillinger and Splinter, those are going to be guys you're going to have to rely on if you're going to be successful. Now it'll be very interesting to see what happens with Clarkson if they're going to change things up a little bit. Who knows what Kurt Richardson's going to do. But that's a team I'm watching too. It's Clarkson. Lake Orion's an interesting one. When I look at the Dragons, this is a team that's went 3-6 last year. John Blackstock's I think he's doing a magnificent job with this team. They got the offense. I think is going to score points. I really do. The question for me is this team's going to be is can they score? Is defensively? That's the big question for Lake Orion. But a player to watch out for. I really do like. He's a very underrated player, but I think he'll make some noise this year. Watch out for Marlon Robinson. I mean, I think that Robinson, very underrated player, could be that power back that typically that basically replaced Dylan Frank last year. I think he's going to be that guy. On the offensive side of the ball, defense is a big concern. Especially in that secondary where it's been a problem for the Dragons for the last 5 years. Has been defensive secondary. It's not. I mean, like giving up the big play, it's not been good. But Lake Orion, a lot of people say this could be a sleeper team, and I think they will be a sleeper team. It wouldn't surprise me if they do. But this team's got low expectations. I mean, so many low expectations now. You know what I mean? That they've had some down years. And basically, low expectations will always help. You know what I mean? But this team is hungry. I think Lake Orion's a team that's hungry heading into the season. You look at Oxford. Oxford, of course, as mentioned, they got some talent. I like that sophomore class they have there. The question I have is their defense. How is the defense going to set up? That's the question I have with Oxford. can Coach Bud Riley fix that defense? I mean, that's the $1 million question for Oxford. Because the pound and rock scheme can work. If you have a lead, and you're not forced to play come from behind a lot. And I think, when you look at Oxford, you need to fix that defense. I mean, and that's the question I have is they have a great sophomore class coming up. I like this class. They got some great players. I mean, coming up. I mean, I like, there's a couple of them that I think are going to be very good. And then, of course, you look at Southfield. I mean, Southfield, I'm curious to see where their mindset's at. Of course, they do have a quarterback, and they did get a quarterback that came in there and who transferred from West Bloomfield. But I'm curious to see if I'm Southfield, if I'm Coach Tim Conley. This is what I'm saying to your players, and I'm not being mean here. Lay off D-zone and start focusing. That's what I think that Southfield needs to do is lay off D-zone and put the work in. And I think they're going to do that. And I hope they do it. You know what I mean? And I know that staff very well. I think they're going to do that. I look at Adams. I'm curious to see what they do now that they're going to be replacing some talent. Of course, you lose guys like Steven Roncelli, who is really good in my opinion. Really, really talented player. Also, especially at class that they lost from last year. They did get a new field though. I like that. They did get a new football field. I like that a lot. Also, for Adams, they have a quarterback in Carter Ferris, who I think is going to be very, very good. So I think Tony Petrino's, I like the direction where he's going. Troy, this is a team where, the quarterback competition, I think, could emerge there for Chris Frazier. You got, of course, you have Lenahan there. You got Drew Petkowski over there. Not sure how that's going to unfold there. But they got a good line, which should be the strength of their team there. You look at Seaholm, ton of experience back. I'm curious to see what Jim DeWall is going to have. Over there. They got, the schedule's pretty favorable for them. It really is. Farmington, of course, you look at what they have. Of course, Corey Soroch. They'll have some talent back, especially on the defense side of the football. They got some questions on the offensive side. Avondale, they got a ton of athletes. Question's going to be their depth. But they got a ton of athletes to make a run. Berkeley, first-year coach Sean Shields. I think this is a very dangerous time for their football team. Really do. But I really think that they got some talent to work with. But as mentioned, if Berkeley becomes Madison Heights Bishop Foley, then this could be really, really bad. Because that's why I'm saying Berkeley football's in a very dangerous predicament right now. Really is. Of course, I mentioned with Athens, I really do like that team, Troy Athens. I like what Billy Keynes has done with that team. I really do. Really talented. I'm curious to see their young team, but they're a sleeper team to watch. They really are. Rochester's an interesting one because, their defense has really suffered the last few seasons. I know Eric Vernon very well. I do like the talent he's got, though. But the question's going to be is how will they mesh? And, of course, the schedule is not going to be easy for them. So that's a question that I will that's a good question right there to ask. Stony Creek, I like the armor up culture that Nick Merlo's done there. I think he's going to do a very magnificent job there. Of course, they got a quarterback competition as well. Of course, when you look at Frank Patesma and Peyton Youngblood, I still believe Patesma is going to be the starter. But it's going to be interesting what Merlo does over there, especially with the quarterback situation there at Stony Creek. he's got a lot of other issues to fix too, especially up front, developing the line. And I also think one of the weaknesses for Stony Creek is a weight conditioning program. I've heard a lot of rumblings the last few years. That the conditioning program has not been the same, and and I think Merlot's going to put together a very good weight conditioning program to get Stony Creek back in the right direction. I think this program's in good hands with Nick Merlot. I really do. Bloomfield Hills. I'm curious to see how the post John Paddock and Jack Sape era is going to be for them. Can they keep the magic up? My opinion there, dangerous, pretty risky, say the least there. And then of course into Southern Oakland County, of course Ferndale. I love the Eagles, the way that team is built under Eric Royal. Now they got some depth concerns, and they got to address quarterback. Who's going to be the quarterback for the Eagles? That's $1 million question for Eric Royal and his team. Really successful last 2 years. I mean, the only other issue that I have is who they've ran in the playoffs. I mean, they had to play Detroit Martin Luther King 2 years ago, and then last year they played Warren Diaz South, so that was a brutal, brutal, brutal experience for them. Just really brutal for them. And then of course let's look at Hazel Park. Hazel Park, this is their last year in the OAA, leaving the league. I think when you look at Hazel Park, they got 3 really true players back. They've got to address a ton for Coach Kyle Riley and his team. Who knows if it's possible he could install the same system that his father ran, of course, at Oxford. Is it possible? It's possible, especially because how young Hazel Park's going to be this year. So, and I think for Hazel Park, I think it's going to be really interesting to see what happens with them in their final season in the league. Go up to Pontiac. I think Pontiac, I like what Charles Tolley's done with that team. Dominic Stovall, if healthy, could be a really good dynamic player for them. And I think at the end of the day, when you look at it, I think that Pontiac, if they want to win their first game, since they have not won a game, a legitimate game. Of course, they had a game last year they won via forfeit, but they've not won a legitimate game in a long time. So for Pontiac, I think that it's going to be key for them is can they handle pressure? Can they handle adversity? And, knowing that, it's going to be a tough road for them. So we'll see what happens with them. And then, of course, you look at North Farmington. I like what Bob Kiaz has done with that team. Bob Kiaz has done a magnificent job, especially with the young team that he's got there. Now, I did have a conversation with him, and he said his team was a year away. And I don't necessarily agree with that statement, but because I think his team can win now. I really like the direction that his team's going. Even though I wish North Farmington would change that helmet, get rid of the white helmets because those white helmets are terrible. But I think has got a really good team. He's got a really, really good team. I think he's going to be fine. I mean, keeps making the improvements, getting better every day, each day and every day. And then you have Royal Oak. Royal Oak was a playoff team last year. Curious to see what Ray McMahon's going to have back. Got some talent, but we'll see what Royal Oak's got. I mean, so those are my early thoughts on the OAA on football right now. Of course, we have a lot going on surrounding football. Of course, you can stick around. My football preview show will be coming up in a span of a couple weeks. We're going to preview each division and, of course, the outlook heading into the season. So, but also I want to briefly talk about the field. I mean, the field updates, of course, at North Farmington, Rochester, Adams, and Lake Orion. They are coming along really, really well. Adams, I just passed by their field the other day and saw the new turf put in. It was really, really nice. North Farmington, I saw some pictures. I like the big Raider logo, surrounding the 50-yard line. It's a really nice job there. And then of course Lake Orion. I mean, very similar design to Clarkston, and I think that's a really good design that Lake Orion's doing. So a lot of good work being put down. Working really hard when it comes to the turf and to the field. So really good job there for each and everybody there. Okay, now I like to get to basketball a little bit here. Of course, there was a little bit of some incidents that have occurred that has really turned some heads. Of course, you have a lot of players that do play AAU basketball, and and a lot of them, just to get the experience. But there's some times it can get ugly. I mean, when you look at what happened, I mean, there was a fight that broke out in Georgia that has created some headlines. When you look at it, it was a really close game, and I could see one team got frustrated with the officials, and and one AU team basically got up. I mean, basically got into a fight with the officials, and and when you look at the cause of the fight, it was not clear, but it tells me that like somebody was clearly frustrated with calls and bad officiating and how the game went, and basically just had it and couldn't take it anymore, and basically and it was odd that the coach of the AU team defended his players. I mean, and there was a fight that occurred between him and the referees, and and I'm reading the source right now, and it was it was one of the players that apparently, and this is alleged, it's on the is one of the players bumped an official, which led to the fight. But it wasn't clear who instigated it. I mean, I'm hoping that I'm hoping somebody's investigating this. I mean, because to me, there's no business, seeing players fight with officials, with punches thrown. It's not even. It doesn't belong in the game. It really doesn't. I mean, and it basically, and they said, and AAU's basketball said they distanced themselves from the event, saying it was not AAU sanctioned. So that's an interesting comment. It's an interesting thought process that that the AAU basketball program said, and they said it on a tweet. They said AAU takes the safety of athletes, coaches, and officials at its events seriously. This past weekend, an on-court incident at a Georgia basketball event was not an AAU event. So, if it was not an AAU event, then what event was it? That's the question that I would ask AAU. That would be the question I ask. I mean, it is there was a statement made, of course, from the officials' managements. They said that they are disappointed with the incident that occurred at the association basketball tournament, and we're taking appropriate action with authorities. Behavior like this by any party will not be tolerated. I mean, when you look at player frustration with officials, it happens. It's common. I mean, if you're getting screwed or getting cheated, but you got to remember, everybody's here human. Everybody's here is human. People make mistakes. They always do. But, you can't take your aggression. You see people so frustrated. You see people, angry all the time. I mean, like, they want what's right. I mean, and, if there's going to be times where officials miss their calls. There's going to be times where you're just going to have to play on and deal with it. And I think, what happened in Georgia, that was very unfortunate. And, it just somebody's pure anger, a team's anger getting into the officials. You know, people ask me, I've had people ask me, when I looked at the 2016 incident between North Farmington and Hazel Park, you know, when a lot of things boiled over. And is it similar to that? No. But this is where actual punches were thrown. But the Hazel Park North Farmington game, it just caused tension, you know what I mean, where you have an athletic director that was thrown out, and then you have a announcer who was a parent basically using the microphone, you know what I mean, promoting saying it was 8-on-5 and all that. You can't say that. You really can't. But and then of course, which led to the final 141 of the game being called out after somebody threw threw a bottle of tea on the court. And but this is, what type of environment are we teaching our kids these days? What type of environment? And if you're a parent asking a kid, if you're a parent thinking about this and saying, what type of society are we doing these days? It's tough. It's really, really difficult. It's really, but either way, I think everybody here's got to be accountable. You know what I mean? Especially what happened in Georgia. You know what I mean? Everybody's got to be held accountable for their own actions. And when I look at what happened, it really much is a really, really tough situation, how it unfolded there. Now, I'm not sure if there were any suspensions handed out or what, but seeing the clips, I could just nod my head. I can nod my head, disappointment. Basically, as mentioned, fighting in basketball, punching at officials is nowhere. It shouldn't even be in the game. It's not even in the game. It shouldn't even be in the game. But people's emotions and anger, it can get to them. You know what I mean? Especially when it's a close game and you really feel like, and there's people out there, players and parents that feel like at times, that the officiating, that the game's being taken away from them. It all depends how the game is managed. So just a very disappointing scene over there in Georgia. And my thoughts on that, just not in disappointment and anger. If you win with class, you lose with class. That's how I feel. And there's nothing else that you can there's nothing else to say, you know what I mean? You just don't go out there, lose, and throw a temper tantrum out there, you know what I mean? Because what are we teaching our kids? What are we teaching our kids? If you should win with class and you should lose with class. That's what I think that's what sports is all about. And what happened at Georgia was uncalled for. Really was. I just hope there are some discipline and suspensions there. I really do. Let's go to another incident that occurred. It was more locally. It was in Whitmore Lake. Apparently a female punched a 13-year-old in the face during a basketball game. It was during and this is another one. as mentioned. Of course, it led to an adult punching a 13-year-old in the face. I mean, what in the heck happened? To see an argument about bad calls leading to somebody getting punched in the face. Now you have the woman facing assault and battery charges. And I'm surprised that when I look at it, and I'm reading the WDIV article from this, and all because arguing over bad calls, and then leading to a woman punching the victim. It's hard for me to describe this. I can understand parents' frustrations, how a game is officiated. But this is a game, now I'm not sure what if it's an AU game over at what went on there, because when you look at fall sports has not started yet, but especially in the that comes next month and some September. So, but first of all, you do not punch you do not punch a 13-year-old in the face. You don't. That's uncalled for. That's assault. Seriously. That is assault and battery. It's because you're upset at a basketball game. It's not the state championship game. It's not a state championship game. It's not it's just a basketball game. As mentioned earlier, you win with class, you lose with class. Do I think that should go? Now, and I think the players get it, but parents, I think they get it. But there's going to be some that disagree. But you do not. I just could not believe that somebody would go that low to punch a 13-year-old in the face. Now, I don't know the details about it, but I just could not believe that somebody would do that. It's atrocious, bad behavior by the adult, and it led to charges being filed. And, I'm curious to see what happens to this person. I'm very curious. Now, I know she'll have some regrets. Everybody's got regrets. But, it's sickening. It's sickening to see an adult punch a kid. It's sickening. It's not right. It's despicable. It really is. But it also tells us what type of culture are we teaching our young kids? What type of culture? And will it have an impact in the high school ranks? We've seen parent frustration escalate. Where parents get upset at officials, as mentioned. But everybody's human. Everybody's human. I'm a human being. Everybody around us here are human beings. It's not like, you want to see your kids succeed. Sure, you do. But you got to know how, you got to see how the games are officiated. And even officials, they're human too. Officials got a really tough job too, I mean, you know, you want to know why there's a referee shortage? You want to know why? Because of the parents. Because you have parents that argue a lot, that create like and officials, they get stressed out. They're stressed out. They get upset. I mean, like, and then you have a parent basically screaming at you. You know what I mean? It's not right. It's not right. That's one of the reasons why the MHA's got a referee shortage outage, is because, you know, it's because they don't want to handle that abuse. They really don't. I mean, it sounds like a broken record, but it is what is. There's gonna be people, that can handle the tolerance. There's gonna be people that can handle it. I mean, but there's gonna be others that, are gonna sound like are gonna get really, really upset, really annoyed, and and if they get a bad call on them, you know what I mean, they're going to and it's a tough situation, to say the least. It really is. So when I think about it, I mean, and I think about this a lot, is basically, what happened was everybody's human. I mean, it really is, when it comes to and it especially happens during basketball games. You know what I mean? Where, basketball can be an emotional game, and it is. I mean, football, same thing. I mean, in calls that don't go your way, I mean, there's going to be calls that go your way. There's going to be some that don't. It's how you deal with it. You know what I mean? It's how you push. You know what I mean? It's how you handle. It's how you handle it. That's how an emotional. That's how emotion. I mean, that's how we've got to teach ourselves this. We've got to teach ourselves this. If we can teach ourselves every day, basically to basically keep our emotion in check, keep everything in line. I mean, then everything will be fine. It's not like the end of the world here. It's really not. I mean, sports is supposed to be enjoyed. It really is. And by the incidents in the basketball ranks, look at the incidents in Georgia and now in this in Whitmore Lake. I mean, to me, this is where emotions got high and it led to violence. It asked me a question. What are we teaching us? What are we teaching these kids? What are the parents teaching these kids? What are and is this the last of it? No, it's not. Because and I know that there will be another incident very similar to this. Now, I hope not, but there will be. I mean, it's hard to say. It really is. It really is, to say the least. I mean, it's kind of hard to say these two incidents, but it is. But that's what so it's my thoughts on this. Really just fighting in basketball is uncalled for. You don't punch a 13-year-old. I mean, and it's whatever. I mean, whatever. And I would expect discipline. You know what I mean? I would expect some discipline on both sides of the aisle. The perpetrators who did that. I would expect discipline on the basketball on those two fronts. I mean, you cannot do that. You got to, and I think You got to win with class. You got to lose with class, So that's my thoughts on the basketball front. Let's go to other sports. Of course, we are getting really close to the start of fall sports, and it's really interesting to see how things have unfolded. Looking forward to the season starting up. I can't wait for it to start up, be honest with you. I mean, I think, when you look at the news recently, covering from football, of course, reading the article from the Detroit News kind of gets me excited for football season a little bit. The basketball front just really made me sad, upset, angry. I'd ask myself, what are we teaching our kids these days on that side of things? But other sports, you look at soccer. Of course, some soccer coming up. That should be really interesting. The favorites have to be the Troy schools, the Rochester schools. I'm curious to see what happens at Lake Orion with Chris Quartek taking over the boys soccer program. Volleyball coming up. Of course, volleyball is going to be very interesting this year. I'm curious to see what how the OA will do, especially considering that it's looking more and more like the balance of power is starting to shift a little bit. I'm curious to see, now that Novi and Novi could be a little bit weaker a little bit. You look at Birmingham Marion with their coaching situation. How's Clarkson going to look? You look at how Lake Orion's going to look. How's the Red going to look? Big story in volleyball also will be how Bob Hurdle's departure, how will that impact Bloomfield Hills? Also, the White, who is the favorite in the White now? Could it be West Bloomfield? Like what Dana Gray's done with that team. Who's favored in the Blue? I still think that'll be North Farmington's division to lose. Basically, and then of course you look at girls swimming coming up. I mean, you got the Birminghams, you got Seaholm there, you got Adams there. So I think that'll be very interesting to see what happens there. And then of course you have I believe it's boys tennis that starts up. Yep. And girls golf. And golf could be interesting. I mean, we'll see what happens going up in the fall. Looking forward to the challenge. And I think and of course we got cross country. And cross country, that'll be interesting because, you look at Troy, who's defending girls cross country state champions. I mean, so that'll be very interesting to see what happens in those sports. So we'll see what happens going forward. As mentioned, we're going to keep an eye on the Groves Point. We're going to keep an eye on the Groves boys basketball situation, Avondale girls basketball. Also the volleyball situation going at Bloomfield Hills. I'm curious to see if any of those schools have named coaches as of yet. None to what I've heard. So we'll see what happens going forward. And of course, you can also stay tuned to my blog at Sammy_Terramina at blogspot.com for the latest information surrounding the OAA. Of course, I haven't wrote a lot on the blog lately. Not a lot to report as of late as well. So very interesting to see what happens going forward with each of the with the blog. So again, I will not be here next week, so there'll be no OA Now next week because I will be out of town. We will have a show next week. 2 weeks. So we'll see what happens going forward. Of course, we'll be keeping an eye on the situations. As mentioned, keep an eye on the blog at Sammy_Terramina@blogspot.com for the latest updates surrounding things around the OAA. Basically surrounding everything that's going on around the league and the impacts of the league. So keep an eye on that on the blog as well. So this is Sammy Termina here. I'm going to sign it off here. Take care, everybody, and see you all. And we'll see you all in 2 weeks, everybody, here on Oaa Now.